tariffs. Is it a losing proposition for Trump? I'm asking you a political question, I guess, but what do you think? Is this what's causing the disapproval?
It is a losing proposition. My goodness, the Supreme Court gave Trump an exit ramp to get away from tariffs, to get away from his obsession with tariffs as being a cure-all for what ails the U.S. economy. He didn't take advantage of it. When people voted him into office, they wanted a containment of price inflation, less price inflation. And unfortunately, there is no way in the world that the imposition of tariffs helps Trump and the Republican Party help to make America affordable again.
Something absolutely devastating just happened to Donald Trump on the one network he thought would always have his back. Hours before he walks into that chamber to deliver the most watched speech of his presidency so far, Fox News just put numbers on screen that should have his entire communications team in emergency mode. Numbers so catastrophic that even the anchors reading them could not find a way to spin them into anything resembling good news. Because when Fox News is calling your signature economic policy a losing proposition, when Fox News economists are explaining on live television that your tariffs are draining money directly from American family budgets, when Fox News hosts are sitting with those approval ratings on screen and running out of words to describe how bad they are, you do not have a messaging problem heading into the State of the Union tonight. You have a collapse. Make sure you're subscribed to The John Brown Show, because what just aired on Fox News before this State of the Union is the most honest preview of Trump's political reality that any network has produced in months, and it came from the last place his supporters expected it. Here's the number that set everything else in motion: 39% approval, 60% disapproval. Those are the figures from a Washington Post ABC News poll conducted in the final days before this address. And to understand why those numbers represent a genuine political emergency, you need the historical context that makes them so striking. This is the lowest approval rating Trump has carried into a State of the Union address in either of his two terms as president. It is the lowest approval rating any president has carried into a State of the Union address this century, not this decade. This century, 25 years of presidential addresses. And tonight, Trump walks into that chamber carrying numbers that no president in that entire window of time has had to navigate. Share this video, because the independent voter breakdown underneath that overall number is where the real disaster lives. Among independent voters, Trump is sitting at 26% approval. 26. 1 year ago, at the same point in his presidency, that number was 43%. That is a 17-point collapse in independent approval in 12 months. But the number that is driving Republican strategists to quietly update their worst-case scenarios is the net approval figure among independents. 47 points underwater. Not 17, not 27. 47 points below water with the exact voters who decide every competitive congressional race in America. Think about what a president does with that number heading into a midterm election year. You cannot recover 47 points of independent approval damage in 9 months through a single speech. You cannot pivot your way out of it with a new messaging strategy. You cannot blame the media for numbers that are appearing on Fox News from economists and analysts who have no ideological incentive to manufacture bad data about a Republican president. You can only walk into the chamber and hope that the performance of the evening moves something. And even that hope is undermined by the reality that the people who most need to be moved are the same people who have already rendered a verdict on this administration's economic performance. Make sure you're subscribed, because what Fox News said about tariffs hours before this address is the part of this story that the White House cannot answer. A Fox News host asked directly whether tariffs represent a losing political proposition for Trump. The economist on screen did not hedge, did not qualify, did not offer a both sides framework that might have given the administration something to clip and share. The answer was direct. It is a losing proposition. The Supreme Court provided Trump with an exit ramp away from his tariff obsession, and he did not take it. American voters elected him expecting relief from price inflation. Tariffs are producing the opposite result. There is no scenario in which this policy helps Trump or the Republican Party make America affordable again. That assessment did not come from a Democratic strategist. It came from an economist appearing on Fox News the day before Trump's State of the Union address. Share this video because the Federal Reserve data sitting behind that assessment makes it impossible to dismiss as political opinion. Federal Reserve economists studied the impact of Trump's tariff structure and found that approximately 90% of the costs are being passed directly to American consumers and businesses, not absorbed by foreign manufacturers, not distributed across global supply chains in ways that insulate American families. 90% landing on the people who are already telling pollsters they feel economically worse off than they did a year ago. Trump's chief economic advisor dismissed that Federal Reserve study as faulty, called it something to ignore. But the prices American families are paying at stores are not a study. They are not a poll. They are not fake news. They are the actual dollar amounts leaving actual wallets every time someone buys manufactured goods, tradable goods, tangible products that move through the supply chains affected by these tariffs. Goods price inflation running at 1.7%. In Trump's first term before the pandemic, goods prices were flat to slightly lower. That gap between what voters expected and what they are experiencing is the foundation of every terrible number in every poll being published right now. Think about what it means for a president to walk into his State of the Union address unable to mention the word that voters care most about. Trump himself acknowledged it in an interview. He said he does not want to hear about affordability. He claimed he had already won on affordability. He said the fake news keeps talking about affordability as if the problem still exists. But 60% of Americans disapproving of his performance is not fake news generating that response. It is families whose grocery bills, utility costs, rent payments, and healthcare expenses are telling them a different story than the one the president wants delivered tonight. Make sure you're subscribed because the farm collapse data that dropped alongside these approval numbers adds another devastating dimension to this economic picture. 15,000 American farms disappeared in 2025. The total number of farm operations in the United States declined across every economic category except the largest commercial operations. Small farms, mid-size farms, family operations that have existed across generations in rural communities that voted overwhelmingly for Trump in 2024. Gone. Texas lost 2,000 farm operations in a single year, the largest state-level decline in the country. Iowa and Indiana lost 500 each. Minnesota lost 1,300. The communities where those farms existed are not abstract political demographics. They are specific towns with specific economies built around agricultural activity that is now contracting. Farm bankruptcies are rising simultaneously with farm closures. And the tariff policy that was supposed to protect American agricultural interests by forcing trade concessions from foreign governments has produced retaliatory measures that targeted American farm exports in the same period these closure numbers were accumulating. Share this video because the Supreme Court ruling that dropped days before this address turned what should have been a policy debate into a legal defeat that Trump has to stand in front of the country and explain. The court ruled that Trump's use of emergency powers to impose sweeping global tariffs exceeded his constitutional authority. The power to impose tariffs belongs to Congress under Article 1 of the Constitution, not the presidency, not emergency declarations, Congress. That ruling did not come from liberal justices looking for opportunities to block a Republican president. It came from a conservative-leaning court that Trump personally shaped through 3 Supreme Court appointments. His own legal structure said no. And Trump's response to that ruling was not the strategic pivot that his own political interests demanded. It was an attack on the justices themselves. Public statements about their character, accusations about their loyalty, claims that the ruling was wrong and he would find other ways to accomplish the same goals. Going into the State of the Union tonight, that response has transformed a legal setback into an ongoing constitutional confrontation that defines his political standing rather than something he moved past. Think about what it means to deliver a State of the Union address days after publicly attacking the Supreme Court justices who will be sitting in the front row of the chamber watching you speak. Make sure you're subscribed because the Senate map surrounding all of this economic and legal damage is where Republican strategists are doing their most anxious calculations right now. 20 of the 33 Senate seats up for election in 2026 are currently held by Republicans. That map was supposed to be the structural protection that preserved Republican Senate control even if the political environment deteriorated. The assumption was that the seats being defended were red enough, the states favorable enough, the structural advantages sufficient enough to hold the majority regardless of national mood. Those assumptions were built on a political environment where Trump's approval with independents was at 43%, not 26%. The 47-point underwater number with independents does not respect favorable Senate maps. It does not stay contained in swing districts. It bleeds into states that were supposed to be safe. It shows up in early voting data in Texas, producing 100,000 ballot gaps in week 1. It appears in special election results showing 31-point swings in districts Trump carried by 17. Share this video because what Fox News analysts are saying about the midterm trajectory confirms that this is not a momentary poll dip that the State of the Union can correct. The walls are closing in. That phrase came from an analyst on Fox-affiliated programming discussing the convergence of Supreme Court defeats, approval rating collapses, economic data contradicting the administration's narrative, and a midterm map that was supposed to be safe but no longer looks that way. When analysts on sympathetic networks are describing closing walls, the political reality has moved beyond spin management into structural territory. Border states are feeling economic pressure from the tariff disruption. Farm communities that delivered Trump his rural margins are watching operations close. Independent voters who powered his 2024 coalition are sitting at 26% approval. And a State of the Union address cannot reverse the economic experience of millions of Americans over the 9 months between now and November. Trump told corporate reporters at a pre-speech White House lunch that the next 3 years will be the greatest economic years in American history, that it has already begun. He will likely deliver some version of that claim from the podium tonight to a chamber missing 70 Democratic members who refuse to sit there and hear it. 60% of Americans outside that chamber will be receiving that claim against the backdrop of their actual economic lives, their actual grocery bills, their actual farm closure notices, their actual tariff costs embedded in the price of manufactured goods, their actual financial situation that 39% approve of and 60% do not. The speech hasn't happened yet. The disaster already has. This story is just getting started. Stay tuned.